number.
Off and running. Let's play hardball. Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. Last week's Democratic presidential debate in Miami marked the first milestone in the long road toward the 2020 presidential election. The debate was packed with stand-up moments and offered voters a glimpse of who could one day face Donald Trump. Take a look.
Vice President Biden, it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing.
The reason that they're separating these little children from their families is that they're using Section 1325 of that act, which criminalizes coming across the border, to incarcerate the parents and then separate them. Some of us on this stage have called to end that section, to terminate it. Some, like Congressman O'Rourke, have not. And I want to challenge all of the candidates to do that.
I am in this fight because I believe that we can make our government, we can make our economy, we can make our country work, not just for those at the top. We can make it work for everyone, and I promise you this, I will fight for you as hard as I fight for my own family.
Whoever comes out on top will have to contend, of course, with Trump, who tweeted reactions to the debate. I'm joined right now by Jason Johnson's politics editor at TheRoot.com. Jonathan Auer, NBC News digital national political reporter, and NBC News correspondent Heidi Przbyla. Heidi, let's talk about a week ago and what happened. And my question at the top is, was that a one-off bad night for Biden and a one-off night, great night for Kamala Harris? Or are we looking at a big trend here?
I think we're seeing the top tier be completely reorganized. Pre-debate, we were talking about Bernie and Biden is being the establishment figure. And now we're talking about really a three-person top-tier race with Warren, Kamala Harris, Biden, and Bernie Sanders being somewhat pushed aside. He's being co-opted. I think the women were definitely the breakout stars here. Yes. I don't think there are many Americans who pre-debate saw Harris as the face of the person who could stand up on a stage with Trump and disassemble him. But you take out Trump, insert Biden, and I think many more people were able to envision that and see that what she did inside Congress with disassembling Attorney General Barr, with some of the other Trump cabinet officials, is something that she can also do in a campaign context.
You know, back in '88, I remember George Sr., the first George Bush, taking apart Dan Rather on television one night. And I thought that was the sparring partner. That was setting him up for taking down Mike Dukakis in the fall. And it worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing here is laziness, to be perfectly candid, on the part of the Biden campaign. There's absolutely no reason that he should have been, you know, Kamala Harris was shooting chin music at him all night, just left, right, jab, left, right. He should have expected that. He should have known that in the first debate. I think that there's a lot of people in Biden world that are still under this arrogant presumption that she's running for vice president. And he found out.
Not anymore.
She's not running for vice president. And that's what he found out.
I think he got it in the chin. And by the way, I just thought that's so true. I completely like that. I can't even think of a better thought than that. She ain't running for VP anymore now. But after she took apart, again, these preliminary rounds, she took apart Brett Kavanaugh piece by piece. Yeah. She took apart Barr. Bill Barr's a much tougher customer. What did Biden think was coming, John? This is what she does. She takes apart the defendant.
Yes, she takes people apart, and Biden had to know this was coming. Everybody was talking about busing in the 70s for weeks. I think people on his campaign tried to get to him, tried to tell him that he needed to have a better answer for this, and he didn't listen. I think this is a huge problem for him, that he thinks he's in a good place on this, and he is not. And if you think about this and you pull back a little bit, the thing Joe Biden has going for him is not that Democrats agree with him. It's that Democrats think he's the most electable. And one more debate performance like that, and there's going to be almost no one in the Democratic Party that thinks he's electable. He was talking about 1973 and failing to explain himself. He needs to be talking about what he's going to be doing in 2023 and explaining himself. That was one of the worst debate performances I've ever seen.
We've watched this guy for a long time, long before his VP, which he got his big break. And he wasn't pulled out of the ditch the way Trump says, but he was really brought back to life by Barack Obama. He was never a heavyweight. He was a middleweight, a good heavy middleweight, fast-moving, fast-punching, and sometimes a light heavyweight. But, you know, he went into this like he was the heavyweight champion. And he wasn't.
He did, and he'd been warned about that just like it wasn't a coronation for Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. Her campaign was so caught off guard by Bernie Sanders, for example, winning in states like Michigan. It's the same thing for Joe Biden, and yet surprisingly, they seem to be running the same playbook in so many regards. And I'm saying this as somebody who covered the Hillary Clinton campaign, down to, and we discussed this before, just the lack of interaction with the media as well, that he doesn't have to take answers. He doesn't have to mix it up with the media the same way that the other candidates did. But I think, we're going to watch now these next few weeks to see what kind of a course correction he's going to do, because like Jonathan says, one more performance like that, people are starting to view that electability label as belonging to someone else.
You make a great point, Heidi, as often you do. But I mean it because de Blasio did a better job than Biden, because de Blasio is in New York, and you got to put up with that hellacious media coverage every couple minutes. So he knows how to fight.
He knows how to fight.
It wasn't a strange place for him to be on that platform. It was a strange place for Joe Biden to be.
And you would think he would know better. Like, if you look at it objectively, he debated Sarah Palin, which is actually more difficult. Remember, because Palin was like he was going to be debating a woman. Everybody knew she was less prepared. He managed that well. He debated Paul Ryan. You would think that he would know how to handle this better. And a clearest indicator that Biden knows he didn't perform well, prior to the debate, the rumor was he was spreading throughout the press, well, he's not going to the press gaggle afterwards. He's got better things to do. He was at that press gaggle afterwards because he knew that he had Joe Biden. Joe Biden, his campaign had been
No, he wasn't.
He was not at the gaggle afterwards? Oh.
He never came to the spin room.
He never came to the spin room?
You're talking to the guy who was begging for him to come there.
Okay.
I thought, so wow, he
Darren Hay grabbed him on stage, but very much against his will, because he had a body man kind of body block him not to get to Biden. But I'm telling you, he did not come in the spin room, which I thought was a huge mistake.
Exactly.
Because you got to get in there and wrestle with people.
And look, we haven't seen Joe Biden on a stage like that in a long time, and he looked like he'd lost a lot of heat off his fastball, and that was the big question coming in. Which Joe Biden?
What do you think, 75 miles an hour? What do you think it was?
It looked like a big fat pitch for Kamala Harris to hit out of the park, and it wasn't just her. Eric Swalwell took shots at him and landed. This was not good for him. And one other last thing, Heidi, definitely jump in.
Okay.
There was one really terrible optic there, too, which was Kamala Harris is taking him apart, and he doesn't do her the courtesy of looking at her.
No. He looked down.
It looked terrible.
He looked penitential. He was like this.
But he's not looking at her. I mean, I can't believe that
she was looking at him.
She was looking at him, and he's not looking at her. And I thought that was a terrible optic.
One thing in defense of Joe Biden, in terms of explaining what might be in his head in terms of strategy, he has got 30, 40 years worth of votes to explain. And from his perspective, he's probably thinking, if I start apologizing now, this is going to turn into a bloodbath. That is the wrong calculation, because you can do something, you can explain, and you can have a conversation with the American people and talk about your evolution without becoming a doormat.
There was a way that Joe Biden could have easily flipped this. He could have turned to Senator Harris and said, look, when you've been in this game as long as I've been, you've had to make tough decisions. And when you can tell me that you never made a compromise when you were a state prosecutor that you felt bad about years later, then you can lecture me on the 45 years that I've had fighting for civil rights. That would have been his answer.
Put that guy in the corner, Mr. Vice President. Get him in there. Put a towel over his shoulder and have him stand next to you when you need some thoughts. Anyway, who's the guy in Rocky? Mickey.
Oh, yeah, Mickey, yeah.
Mickey, anyway, thank you, Jason Johnson. Thank you, Jonathan Allen and Heidi Przbyla. Coming up, my conversations with the presidential contender.